All right, guys. So let's get on to this one. Now, you CLP subs know this hand because I covered it in depth on the podcast from last week. But the plan was to get Alex on the phone, if I can find the goddamn hand. The plan was to get Alex on the phone, who is the villain in this hand he was the villain in this hand from Hustler Casino Live. And he was going to do a thing where he was calling in a hand and we were going to do a reveal, and it was like Bart was the villain. It was going to be all funny, but him and I apparently disagree on the actual details of the hand, which is quite problematic for a phone call. So I'm just going to go over it myself. I just kind of think it's funny. There was a guy also too at the table, and he tweeted about this hand too, the Sandor Poker. I said, I don't know if you remember this hand, but me and this guy are going back and forth, and we're trying to figure out what the details of this hand were. And he said I was 100% right in the action. All right. So this is after the Hustler live stream from a couple of weeks ago on Thursday, September 13th? 14th. Thursday, September 14th, Thirsty Thursday. I will be going back to the Hustler. By the way, we are doing another giveaway as well. You can click on the link in the description on how to get your chance to enter not only a piece of me, but also some Hustler Casino Live swag too. Swag. Is that like marijuana? Swag. Hustler Casino Live swag. They're giving, and we're actually giving away a few CLP premium subscriptions as well. So there isn't just grand prize winners. We're giving away a lot of stuff. But anyways, this hand, I had a really good night on the live stream. It was, I was up 22,000 for the show. And then we started to play. Usually the game breaks down a little bit. Nick left right away. A couple people left, but we were playing like 4 or 5 handed. So this hand goes down here and we're playing, I think it was 4-handed. Now, granted, I have to give props to my opponent here. This is Thirsty Thursday, right? The whole concept of this game, my opponent was Alex. The whole point of this game was to drink. So he was really getting like the booze flowing for a lot of people. He even got side of the bot to drink. But him and I, like, we were probably at least 8 drinks, and this is why we're going back and forth about the details of the hand. But it was about 10K effective. It might have been a little bit shorter, but it's not going to have relevance. But we're playing 10, 20, 40 with a 40 ante, and I believe it was 4-handed because I have in my notes the button folds. I'm in the straddle, okay? So the villain in the small blind limps. So limps completes for 30. Completes 30. This dude in the big blind, his name was Nico. He completes for 20. And I look down in the straddle at Queen 10 of clubs. And I cover them both and I raise. Because I'm like, this is way too good against two like just limpers, right? So I go to 200. Raise to 200. They both call. Small blind and big blind call. And we're off to the races. That's 600 and change with an ante, so it's 640. Okay. So we're off to the races here. Now, the flop comes out 7 of clubs, 6 of clubs, deuce of hearts. So we flop a flush draw, and they both check. Check, check. And this is my sort of first thought here. And I talked about this on the CLP website podcast. The question here is sizing, right? It's like, well, who does this favor in terms of board? The way that I looked at this one was that, sure, somebody could have 7-6, but I could have 7-6 here too. I could also have 7s and 6s raising. I mean, I didn't really look at this like, oh, somebody who's limp calling had a real nut advantage over me in this setup, 4-handed, and me raising out of the straddle against 2 guys that limped in the blinds. What I really sort of looked at this was that obviously I'm drawing to a very strong hand, and there are many, I think, I have 2 overcards and a flush draw, and there are disconnected sort of high cards here that don't interact with the board that I can barrel. So obviously I make top pair with a queen or a 10. Club comes, I make a flush. A jack is not connected. A king is not connected, nor really is an ace. An ace is kind of a special one though. So I was just like, I can just start barreling now. And we're fairly deep. For that reason, I decided to go with a little bit of a larger size, 400. So here, bet 400. And now, Alex, out of seat 1 in the small blind, and I swear to God, 99.9999% sure that this happened. For some reason, he seems to think he was in position, but I've got my backup guy here too. He check raises me to 1,600. Big blind fold, and now it's over to me. So I was like, okay, this is interesting here. Because it's a big check raise, right? I mean, he's going to 4x. So the pot is what? 1040 plus 1,600 is what? 1040 plus 1,600 is 2,640. It's 1,200 for me to call. I mean, I'm getting over 2-1. I know in the back of my head here that there is a possibility, sometimes, once in a while, that he could overflush me sometimes. It's going to be interesting on what sort of comes out with the run out. But sort of looking at this, when you take a look at the way that people construct like semi-bluffs here and how somebody might play pre-flop in this particular setup, like if they had the nut flush draw, not only am I seeing a little bit less check raises here, but a lot of those hands just raise pre right out of the small blind, any ace X suited. So what about like king X? Again, you got suited broadways that are going to raise off is, maybe like a king 5. But the way that a combo draw or some other draw interacts with this board is it would tend to be slightly lower than a queen high flush draw. 8-5, 8-9, well, he can't have 9-10 of clubs, but 9-10 with the back door. I think you 4-5, right? So I knew that. So I call. So hero calls. So we put in 3,200 here on the turn, and now it's 3,840. And now the turn comes the 6 of diamonds. So obviously it pairs the board. And what I can tell you, and again, I sort of said this in my podcast and I put it in the notes, is that the villain in the hand goes sort of out to put out a bet and kind of box, like in baseball. Like a motion and then stops. Like he was gonna bet and then he kind of pulls it back. Not an angle. It's just like a read. Like it was like, check. You know what I mean? Something like that. This is really the first interesting inflection point here of the hand where some of the subscribers who posted in this one in the forum post said that, and I tend to, I think that they have some good thoughts on this, is that be betting the turn here a lot on the turn. Like he's got a fair amount of give ups here. He's got a fair amount of give ups because it's really not from the out of position perspective. If he is starting some sort of bluff with some sort of draw, there's a lot of, there's not a lot, but there are some check raise give ups, and usually the cards that are check raise give ups the most are the board pairs, right? Because it's just cutting down the equity on so many types of draws, right? Now, what I do find interesting though about this, but you got to be really, really brave. I don't know, really, really brave or really, really stupid. We'll see here at the end. But because of the way that what my hand is, and the way that most of the draws interact with the board, a case could be made that I am ahead here anyways, and that I don't really need to bet. But if you were to think that, you might need to make some ridiculous call downs at the end. Some ridiculous call downs at the end, right? Absolutely ridiculous. So he checks and I check back. Again, maybe I should have bet. Maybe I should, I don't know how often this is bet. I can see the reason for betting, but I think if I had less showdown value, it's less of a, if I had less showdown, it's more of a bet and less of a check, right? Some people are already saying, oh God, never check here. What is he check raising that I'm behind? Mr. WQEWQER restart the live chat. Anyways, I check behind. So it remains 3,840. And we go to the river here, and the river is the 7 of hearts. So the board is 7, 6, deuce, 6, 7. And now it's double paired. And obviously, like, somebody could have had a boat here, right? Somebody could have had a boat. So obviously somebody could be, he could have been sandbagging a boat, right? 7-6, who knows, quad sixes, pocket sevens, something like that. But the interesting part on this particular run out now is that all those hands get cut off a lot, right? There's one combo of 7-6 suited. This is where the board distribution comes into play because the club, the diamond, and the heart are out there. One combo of 7-6 suited, and obviously just one combo of sevens and one combo of sixes for quads, right? Now, deuces full, still three combos of that, although it gets a little bit, I'm not saying that someone's not going to bet that, but it does start to get a little bit strange on a seven, when he's losing to a 7 and a 6. And how often does he check that, right, on the turn? I feel like more thick sevens full and 7-6 do more checking than deuces, which can lose sometimes, like if they get counterfeit, like with a 6 or something. So that's my thinking here. So he thinks for a bet, and he bets 3,100. 3,100 into 3,800. So the pot is 69.40. And it's 3,100 for me to call. So I'm getting I'm getting over 2-1, but not much, right? I need to be good here. Maybe, what am I getting, like 2.2, 2.3-1, something like that. I mean, I've already sort of done the hand analysis out here where I was like, what does his flop? Let's take the whole hand back from the start, which is he limped in small blind, check raised flop, and then checks turn, and then bets 3,100 on the river. Would we say that this is a pretty polar spot from our opponent here? Polar being like he's either going to be very, very strong or he's bluffing, right? Very, very strong or bluffing. Now, maybe I'll define like deuce, deuce as very, very strong, right? Of course, you can get into these situations, though, where your opponent is bluffing and you sometimes can't beat a bluff, which is very, very problematic. Of course, I do note that I have the 10 of clubs in my hand, which blocks some of those front door combo draws, like 9-10 of clubs, 10-8 of clubs, something like that. But 8-9 is available, 4-5 is available, a hand like 5-8 is available, 9-10 on the backdoor side is also available. So in reality, and then like I said, and I even said it at the time too, when I was considering calling, was this would really suck if you Sandor said in Twitter, because I when I was DMing him today, and maybe I'll bring this up too, I'll ask him. But when I said to him, when I was asking about the hand action, he said, I absolutely know that the hand went down this way because I don't think he's going to care. So let me just bring this up. He literally could not have position. He could not have been in position because he leads into the river on you, and out loud, you were like, well, I'm worried you'll show me king jack of clubs. And that's true. I said, thanks. We might have some issues with this because we can't figure out which positions people are in. But he literally couldn't have been in position because he leads into the river, and out loud, you're like, well, I'm worried you'll show me king jack of clubs. And that's true. That is absolutely true. That was the thing. So I was absolutely worried that he might show me down the king high flush draw. But like I said, now that when you sort of look at this a little bit, I think that all those hands pre-flop would raise. So the question then becomes like, am I losing ever to like king 4 or king 5 of clubs here? Because would those hands always bluff at the end here too? Would they always bluff at the end? Now, some small pairs get counterfeit here, and it was really all about the fact that I counted a lot of sort of draws around the 7-6 and the straightening draw types of holdings here that missed. And I was like, well, I don't even know how many deuces full hands he goes with, and there's so few value combos that are out here with this board pairing that I did call. And he says, you fucking fish, and rolls over the good old 3 deuce of clubs for the counterfeited lower flush draw. And I win a over a $10,000 pot with queen high. Yeah, it was definitely a really interesting one for sure. But yeah, I mean that was kind of a long. And the real question though comes is like, what kind of bricks am I? I mean, this was probably one of the best bricks in the deck, really, for me to be able to make a call with queen high. What other kind of bricks can I call down with here? That guy was giving it to me in the live chat saying that I don't have showdown value on turn. I actually think that I do have some showdown value. The only thing that I would say here too, the other thing that I did not bring up is that one of the spots that is sort of under check raised, and remember I went 2/3 on the flop, but one of the spots is under check raised is like from live players. I don't know how Alex Next constructs. You're not going to see a lot of 7x check raised here or 6x. I think that's really important too, looking back. Maybe less so than any solver would say. So that's one of those ones where if you can pull out the 7x and the 6x where he doesn't have those types of holdings, just the stiff 6 and the stiff 7, then I think that you can see where I'm coming from. So I did make the call there, and that was a nice $10,000 pot with queen high.